The air in our house was always thick, heavy with unspoken resentment and the smell of damp wood. But after the doctor's visit, the air changed. It became sharp, charged with a desperate, frantic energy that made the hair on my arms stand up. Mom had 3 daughters in a row. Me, the eldest. Then Becky. Then Sarah. In our town, nestled in the valley where the fog rarely lifted, daughters were debts. Sons were assets. My father didn't beat us, but his silence was a heavy hand. He looked through us like we were ghosts haunting his house, reminders of his failure to continue the line. The doctor, a tired man with spectacles that magnified his weary eyes, had been blunt. "Your body can't handle another pregnancy, Mrs. Miller. The lining of your uterus is too thin. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. Another child could kill you." Mom didn't hear the warning. She only heard the challenge. "If I get pregnant again," she whispered to herself that night, staring into the fireplace, "it has to be a boy. It must be a boy." She disappeared for 3 days. Dad said she went to visit Aunt Martha in the next county, but I knew better. Aunt Martha had died 5 years ago. When Mom returned, she looked different. There was a strange flickering in her eyes, a gleam that made my skin crawl. It wasn't happiness. It was a hunger. She carried a heavy canvas bag that clinked softly when she set it down. She didn't open it. Instead, she called me and Becky into the kitchen. It was late. The wind was howling outside, rattling the loose window panes. Mom sat at the table, her hands folded in front of her. On the table sat 2 pieces of candy. They were wrapped in shiny, red foil, looking out of place in our drab kitchen. "Girls," she said, her voice unusually soft, almost crooning. "You know how much I want a son. In this town, without a boy, we'll always be nothing. People will always look down on us. Your father, he suffers because of it." Becky blinked those big eyes of hers, too big for her thin, underfed face. She was 8 years old and desperate for Mom's affection, which was usually rationed like water in a drought. "Eat up," Mom urged, pushing the candy toward her. "It's a treat. A promise for the future." Becky popped the candy straight into her mouth. She chewed, her eyes lighting up. "It's sweet, Mommy. Like strawberries." She looked up at Mom with that eager-to-please expression that broke my heart. "Yes, Mom," she mumbled through the sweetness. "I want a little brother, too. Then Daddy will smile." The candy sat in my palm. It felt heavy, warm. A voice in the back of my head, a primal instinct honed by years of watching Mom's erratic moods, screamed don't. I pretended to put it in my mouth. I coughed, covering my face with my hand, and slipped the red foil-wrapped lump into my pocket. "Swallowed it whole," I lied, my voice trembling. "Seriously, Mom. I know you'll have a son. We all pray for it." Mom looked at me. Her gaze was intense, searching. For a second, I thought she knew. Then, she smiled. It wasn't a mother's smile. It was the smile of someone who had just closed a business deal. "Good girls," she whispered. "Go to sleep." I fell asleep in a haze of fear. The candy burned a hole in my pocket even as I lay in bed. The next morning, the screaming woke me. It was Dad. He had found Becky. She had gone down to the creek to play early in the morning, something she never did. They found her face down in the shallow water, her skin pale and cold. I was devastated. I cried until my throat was raw. But Mom was eerily calm. She didn't shed a tear. She stood by the creek bank, watching them pull Becky's small body out of the mud, her hand resting protectively over her flat stomach. 2 days later, she brought home something fashionable for a small town like ours, a cremation urn. It was ceramic, painted with blue lotuses. Except the urn was empty. There was no funeral. No ashes. Just the urn, placed on the mantelpiece like a trophy. Then, Mom handed me a metal canister. The label had been ripped off, leaving only sticky residue and the word formula handwritten in black marker. "Mix me a cup every day," she ordered. "Twice a day. Don't spill a drop." I opened the lid. Inside was a fine, grayish powder. It didn't smell like milk. It smelled like earth. Like old dirt and something coppery, like dried blood. "What is it?" I asked. "Hope," she said. Chapter 2, The Swelling. Ever since Mom started drinking that formula, her belly grew. And it grew fast. By the 2nd month, she looked 5 months pregnant. By the 4th month, she looked ready to pop. Half the town whispered she was carrying twins. Others, the old women who sat on porches chewing tobacco, said the way her belly came to a sharp point meant it was definitely a boy. Mom couldn't stop smiling. She walked through town with her head held high, her hand resting on the mound. "Just one baby," she'd say, beaming at anyone who asked. "He's just big. Well-nourished." The child really was enormous. Mom's belly swelled up like a watermelon on the verge of bursting. Purple-red stretch marks crawled up toward her chest like lightning strikes. She was always complaining about how itchy those marks were, scratching at them until they looked even more horrifying, raw, angry lines across her skin that oozed clear fluid. Lately, as she got further along, she kept saying her belly felt hard as a rock. Not firm muscle, but stone. Whenever that happened, a cup of that formula would bring color back to her face and calm her down. She stopped cursing at me. She stopped noticing the dust in the corners. She was entirely focused on the thing growing inside her. But the powder in that canister was running out. I told Mom there wouldn't be enough to last until the baby was born. "Should we get more?" The moment the words left my mouth, Mom's eyes locked onto me. Her pupils were dilated, black holes swallowing the light. "Is Sarah home from school yet?" she asked softly. I froze. She's playing in the yard." Mom nodded. "I'm going to stay at Grandma's for a couple of days. I need rest." I didn't dare argue. Even without her saying it, I knew Mom was going to get more formula. And I knew the price. Sure enough, 3 days later, Mom came back. But Sarah didn't. Mom said Sarah had been in a car accident near Grandma's house. A hit and run. Very tragic. She brought home another empty urn. It sat next to Becky's on the mantel. And she handed me a sugar canister. It was filled with that same fine, odorless, gray powder. "Mix it," she said, her voice hoarse. "Hurry." Following her instructions, I mixed the two powders together. As I stirred the gray sludge into hot water, the smell hit me again, earth and iron. I overheard her muttering to herself in the living room, rubbing her massive, undulating belly. Good thing I kept the smaller one as backup. Otherwise, how would I feed my precious baby boy? He's so hungry. He eats so much. Every hair on my body stood on end. I realized then that my sisters weren't just gone. They were fuel. Chapter 3, The Birth. Mom's labor was brutal. It started on a stormy Tuesday night. The baby was too big, but she insisted on a natural birth. Better for the child, she gritted out between screams. He needs to fight his way out. Makes him strong. The midwife, Mrs. Gable, looked terrified. He's stuck, Martha. We need to go to the hospital. We need to cut. No hospital. Mom roared, a sound that didn't sound human. Cut me here. They had to cut her. I watched from the doorway, paralyzed, as the blood dripped, drip, drip, drip onto the wooden floorboards. The baby was indeed a boy. He slid out in a rush of dark fluid. He weighed 12 pounds. He was fat and plump, his skin a strange, doughy white. He didn't look like a newborn at all. He looked like he'd already been fattened up for months. His limbs were thick, his fingers long. The moment my brother was born, our old black dog, Buster, started barking. Buster was a gentle mutt, usually lazy and quiet. But tonight, he was tied up in the yard, straining against his chain, barking at the house like he was seeing the devil himself. Listen to that, the midwife said, trying to lighten the mood as she stitched Mom up. Black dog announcing good fortune. It's an omen. Mom's grin stretched from ear to ear as she nursed the baby. My lucky star, she cooed. That dog barked all night long. Nobody in the house could sleep. The barking wasn't aggressive anymore, it was high-pitched, terrified yelping. Late that night, I snuck over to the window to look. Buster was facing Mom's room, whimpering every now and then, his tail tucked between his legs. He was trembling. My brother, they named him Thomas, didn't cry. He didn't fuss. He'd eat and sleep. That's it. His mouth would latch onto Mom with a ferocity that made me wince. Dad and Mom kept saying he was their lucky star, their good boy. Not like you girls, Dad grumbled, looking at me. You came into the world to collect debts. Screaming your heads off from day one. Mom's belly deflated like a punctured balloon after Thomas came out. But it looked wrong. The skin hung loose, gray and lifeless, like dead meat. And sometimes, I swore I saw movement under the loose skin, like there was still something in there. A smaller child, maybe. Or something else. Chapter 4, The Soup. The next morning, the black dog finally stopped barking. Mom sent me to heat water for the baby's bath. She wouldn't let me touch her precious son, terrified I might drop him or infect him with my girl clumsiness. I had just finished washing the basin when Dad got home. He'd caught the earliest bus back from the city after hearing the news. He rushed into the room, eyes wide with joy. A boy. Martha, you did it. He held Thomas like he was made of gold. Look at him. Look at the size of him. He's going to be a linebacker. Mom took him back quickly. She kissed the baby again and again on his forehead. My boy knows to love his mama. He knows mama just suffered for him. He's closest to mama. Dad laughed, thrilled to finally have a son. Greedy little brat, you just want the milk. That day, Dad made chicken soup for Mom to help her recover. He killed our best laying hen for it. I even got a bowl with a small piece of chicken in it. I sat there at the table, terrified, my mouth watering at the smell of meat, but my heart felt heavy as lead. This was nothing like when Becky and Sarah were born. Back then, the house was filled with gloom. Dad had gone to the bar and stayed there for 2 days. Mom had refused to look at the babies. I sniffled, fighting tears. I looked at the chicken. I thought of Becky's sweet tooth. I thought of Sarah's laugh. In the end, I didn't drink the soup. I waited until Mom and Dad were asleep. I took the bowl to my room. I placed it in front of the 2 empty urns on my dresser. I had stolen them from the mantel when Mom wasn't looking, terrified she would throw them away now that she had her son. I bowed my head. Little sisters, have some soup. Sorry, there's not much meat. You two share it. Don't fight, okay? The room was silent. But the air felt colder. Don't worry, I whispered. This time Mom and Dad won't find out. I'll protect you. At night, the black dog started barking again. But tonight's bark wasn't threatening. It was anguished. Like someone was beating it. Dad had just come back inside from smoking when he snapped. Shut that damn dog up. He stormed out to the yard. I heard the dull thud of boots hitting ribs. The yelps turned into screams, then whimpers. I ran to the window. I watched Dad kick Buster repeatedly. Shut up. You'll wake my son. Dad! I screamed, running out the back door. Stop. The midwife said it's good luck. It's the black dog announcing fortune. Dad finally stopped, panting hard. He looked at me, eyes wild, then spat on the ground. Fortune my ass. It's a nuisance. He went inside. Buster lay on the ground. He was barely breathing, blood matting his fur. I took the cold chicken soup offering, my sisters hadn't eaten it, of course, and poured it out into Buster's bowl. Please stop barking, boy, I whispered, stroking his head. You'll just get beaten again. Eat. The dog looked at me with one swollen eye. He lapped up the soup slowly. He didn't bark again. Chapter 5, The Fever. In the middle of that night, my brother spiked a high fever. Mom and Dad were sleeping deeply, exhausted from the excitement. Thomas didn't make a sound. He didn't cry out in distress. He just lay there, burning up. I only discovered it because I woke up to use the bathroom and heard a strange, wheezing sound coming from the crib in Mom's room. I crept in. Thomas was red. Not pink, but beet red. Heat radiated off him like a furnace. Mom! I shook her. Mom, the baby! Dad rushed to get the town doctor. Mom kept wiping Thomas's hands and feet with rubbing alcohol, muttering prayers. By evening, they had tried everything. Cold compresses, baby Tylenol, prayer circles. But the fever wouldn't break. The thermometer read 104. Mom bit her lip until it bled. She turned to me, her eyes wild. The formula. Is there any left? A little, I whispered. Just dust at the bottom. Mix it. Now. I scraped the canister. I mixed a tiny bowl of gray sludge. Mom spooned it into Thomas's mouth. My brother had barely had the strength to nurse all day, pushing the nipple out with his tongue. But this stuff. He didn't resist at all. His eyes opened, black, soulless orbs, and he swallowed it greedily. He drank the whole bowl. Mom was overjoyed. She turned to look at me, her eyes gleaming with a hungry green light. See? He needs strength. Unfortunately, the formula only gave him enough strength to eat. The fever remained. Dad paced in circles. If this keeps up, the fever will cook his brain. He'll be an idiot. When Mom heard her precious son might become disabled, tears streamed down her face. Isn't there any other way? We've called every doctor in town. She stared at my brother's flushed face. He must have attracted something unclean. The dog, the barking, it was a warning. Mom called me over and stuffed a piece of paper in my pocket. Her hands were ice cold. Go to the next town over. This address. Find the blind fortune teller. Bring her here. Whatever she asks for, pay it. Chapter 6, The Fortune Teller. The fortune teller was a woman made of wrinkles and smoke. She smelled of incense and old paper. She didn't have eyes, just empty sockets sewn shut, but she moved through our house like she could see every sin hidden in the walls. She examined my brother. She hovered her hands over him without touching him. He is full, she rasped. Too full. She told Dad to bring a bowl of clean water, 3 chopsticks, and a sharpened knife. She stood the 3 chopsticks upright in the bowl of water. They shouldn't have stood. The bowl was smooth, the water deep. But she let go, and they stood there, perfectly vertical, clustered together. She started calling out names. Ancestors. Old spirits. Nothing happened. Then she paused. She tilted her head. Becky, she whispered. Sarah. The water rippled. The chopsticks trembled but stayed standing. The fortune teller sighed. Your daughters have come back. They are holding on to their brother. They are jealous. Mom let out a sob. My babies. Why would they hurt him? They are hungry, the fortune teller said simply. You fed him what was meant for them. I felt a chill go down my spine. The soup. The formula. The fortune teller took out a yellow paper talisman and lit it with a match. She circled the flame 3 times over Thomas's head, chanting low words I couldn't understand. Then she circled it 3 times over the chopsticks. She used the back of the knife to knock the chopsticks over. They clattered to the floor. One of you needs to pour out the water at the crossroads, she commanded. Place the chopsticks pointing at the door with a bowl upside down on top of them. This knife goes under your son's pillow. She turned her eyeless face toward me. The girl. She takes this burning talisman outside. You must say, I'm sending you away, I'm sending you away. And you have to make it all the way past the gate. Only then will they truly leave the house. She handed me the burning paper. It was already more than half burned. The flame licked at my fingers. Go! Dad yelled. Run! I took the paper and ran. I'm sending you away, I'm sending you away, I chanted, my voice shaking. The wind was strong that night. It whipped my hair into my face. The paper burned faster than it should have. I ran toward the gate. 10 feet. 5 feet. I'm sending you away. Just before I reached the gate, the fire reached my fingertips. It burned. My fingers reflexively let go. The wind caught the last scrap of black ash. It swirled in the air, dancing mockingly, and fell inside the yard. I stared at it. It hadn't crossed the gate. I looked back at the house. My brother's wheezing had stopped. He was sleeping peacefully. I swallowed hard. I didn't tell anyone. Chapter 7, The Warning. The fortune teller sat in the kitchen, drinking tea. Mom and Dad were thanking her profusely, pressing money into her hands. The fever is gone, Mom wept. You saved him. The fortune teller didn't smile. She glanced at my brother in the other room, then at the window where the black dog lay in the yard. Has your dog been barking these past few days? She asked. Yes, Mom said eagerly. When my son was born, the dog started barking. Someone told me it was the black dog announcing good fortune. Last night it barked all night, too, Dad added. 2 nights in a row. Wouldn't let anyone sleep. The fortune teller frowned. It didn't bark tonight? No, Dad said proudly. Last night it was driving me crazy. I went out and kicked it a few times. Taught it a lesson. Didn't bark in the second half of the night. The fortune teller sighed, a long, rattling sound. Black dogs ward off evil. You've had this dog for years. It's barking for no reason? No. There is always a reason. She asked about our family situation. When she heard we lost 2 daughters to unnatural deaths in a single year, her face went pale. Her hand tightened around her cane. And the urns? She asked. Where are they? In the girls' room, Mom said dismissively. The fortune teller stood up abruptly. I must leave. Wait, Mom said. Is it over? Is he safe? The fortune teller hesitated. If that's the case, it means your family's bloodline is cursed this year. You need to be very careful. The child's fever has broken, but the debt is not paid. She turned to leave. I walked her to the gate. At the gate, she stopped. She grabbed my wrist with a grip like iron. She didn't look at me, and her voice was so soft it was almost like she was talking to herself. Tonight, she whispered. Stay in your room. Lock your door and windows. You must fall asleep. If you can't sleep, pretend. What? I asked, terrified. If something comes into your room, keep your eyes closed no matter what. Don't look at anything. Don't acknowledge anything you hear. Do not speak. She leaned closer, her breath smelling of grave dirt. Someone in your house is going to die tonight. Make sure it isn't you. Then she was gone, disappearing into the darkness of the road. Chapter 8, The Visitation. I ran back to my room. I locked the door. I pushed my dresser in front of it. I locked the window. I crawled into bed and pulled the covers over my head. I tried to sleep. But how could I? The house was silent. Dad was snoring in the master bedroom. Mom was asleep with the baby. Hours passed. The clock chimed midnight. Then 1 a.m. Then 2 a.m. At 3 a.m., the temperature in the room dropped. I could see my breath puffing against the blanket. Then, I heard it. Scratch. 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 It was coming from the window. I squeezed my eyes shut. Don't look. Don't look. The window latch clicked. I had locked it. I knew I had. But it clicked open. The window slid up. Something wet and heavy flopped onto the floor. Thud. Then another thud. Thud. 2 of them. I heard the sound of wet, squelching footsteps moving across the floorboards. They smelled of pond water and gasoline. Becky. Sarah. They were whispering. But their voices didn't sound like little girls. They sounded like grinding stones. Where is it? One hissed. Brother has it, the other replied. Brother ate it all. They moved toward the door. They were leaving my room. They were going to Mom and Dad's room. I should have screamed. I should have warned them. But the fortune teller's words rang in my ears. Someone is going to die. Make sure it isn't you. I lay there, tears streaming down my face, paralyzed by cowardice. I heard their bedroom door creak open. Then, silence. For a long time, nothing. Then, a sound that will haunt me forever. The sound of chewing. Wet, enthusiastic chewing. And the soft cracking of small bones. My brother didn't cry. Mom didn't wake up. Dad didn't snore. Just the chewing. Chapter 9, The Morning After. I woke up when the sun hit my face. I was alive. I stayed in bed for an hour, terrified to move. Finally, the silence of the house forced me up. I pushed the dresser aside. I opened my door. The hallway was empty. I walked to my parents' room. The door was ajar. Mom? I whispered. I pushed the door open. Mom was sitting up in bed. She was rocking back and forth, cradling a bundle in her arms. She was humming a lullaby. Dad was still asleep beside her, facing the wall. Mom? I stepped closer. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were gone. Not gouged out, just gone, like the fortune teller's. Just smooth skin where eyes should be. She smiled. He's so hungry, she whispered. He ate so much. I looked at the bundle in her arms. It wasn't Thomas. It was the black dog, Buster. Or what was left of him. His head was missing. Where is Thomas? I choked out. Mom laughed. She pointed to Dad. I walked around the bed. Dad wasn't sleeping. His throat had been torn out. And his stomach was cut open. Inside Dad's hollowed-out stomach cavity, curled up like he was back in the womb, was Thomas. But Thomas wasn't a baby anymore. He was gray. He was covered in scales. And he was chewing on Dad's liver. He looked up at me. His eyes were the same as the fortune teller's. Sister, the thing croaked. Soup. I ran. I ran out of the house, past the gate where the ash had fallen, past the town, and I didn't stop until I collapsed on the highway. They say Mom is still in that house. They say she rocks the dog bones and sings to the thing that lives in the walls. And every time I see a piece of red candy, I feel the weight of it in my pocket, and I wonder, if I had eaten it, would I be the one in the wall?